So next on our list for the symposium is, the title is Approaches to Prevent and Manage Viruses Introduced by Seed. And the presenter is Dr. Sudeep Bagg at the University of Georgia. And just a quick overview of Sudeep. He's an assistant professor in the Department of Plant Pathology. He received his PhD in plant pathology at Washington State University at Pullman. And his primary focus is etiology, epidemiology, and genomics of emerging and re-emerging viruses in vegetable crops, understanding the crosstalk between host virus vector systems and utilizing it to mitigate disease. And finally, the application of recent advances in genomics and molecular biology tools for management of viruses. So we really appreciate you being here today, and we're going to turn it over to you.
So I hope everyone can hear me. And good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for Jordan for inviting me. Since morning, we are listening about different viruses. We begin with one transmitted by us, human, followed by virus transmitted by thrips, and lastly, virus transmitted by aphids. So I will move to a different one that is transmitted by seeds, and what can we do to prevent or manage viruses that are transmitted by seeds. So the work I'm presenting today is done by my MS student. She defended her thesis on last Friday, and she presented part of her work yesterday during the MS competition. And this is a teamwork that was done in collaboration with USDA ARS, as well as collaborator at ICRISAT India, as well as in Senegal. And it is funded by USDA APHIS, Georgia Peanut Commission, and National Peanut Board. Thank you everyone for your support and collaboration. So as we see, there are numerous viruses transmitted by aphids and all other different vectors. Approximately, there are listed around 30 viruses known to impact or known to infect groundnut or peanut. Of that, 7 that are listed here that are transmitted by seeds at varying percentage. It may vary from 2% to up to 35%. So of these 7 that are listed here, 3 are already present in the US or worldwide. They are present, and they are already, although they are present in US, they are also listed as quarantine in US. But in today's talk, I will be discussing only on these 2 clump viruses that are recently listed as a quarantine pathogen in 2017 in the US by USDA APHIS. And I've been working on these to develop tools to detect the viruses. These clump viruses are mainly restricted to Central and Western Africa, where it is called as peanut clump virus, and the one that are restricted to India, or the Indian subcontinent, they are called as Indian peanut clump virus. So this clump virus, they are having 2 different species. One is, as I mentioned, peanut clump virus, that is peanut clump virus that is restricted to Africa, and the other one is Indian peanut clump virus. Further, based on the serology as well as on the genomic composition, IPCV or Indian peanut clump virus is further differentiated into D, H, and L. So these are based on different places where they are found. These viruses, both PCV and IPCV, they are bipartite or rod shaped, as we can see in the image, and as well as their genomic consists of RNA1 and RNA2. Looking at how their symptoms or how the symptoms are observed in the field, if the clump virus, they infect the plant early in the stage, they will have a mottling, mosaic, or chlorotic symptom. And those are very much similar to what we have seen in rosette disease, or they remain stunted compared to the uninfected or healthy virus. Whereas when they are infected late in the season, they may not show any symptom, but they will not produce any, they will produce flower, but there may not be any bud or any pod formation. These clump viruses, apart from groundnut, they have another wide host range that include both monocot and dicot. And further, they are transmitted by mechanical, by sap inoculation. Along with that, their major vector here is a fungus, Polymyxa graminis. So this is a soil fungus that is present in the soil, and it can also transmit the virus. So this particular virus can transmit it by seed up to 6%, along with it can be transmitted by fungus. So for at the commercial level, the most of the detection or how we can know whether the virus is present or not in the plant is infected or not is based on the ELISA technique or serological technique. And there is no commercial kits available that can detect both the strain or both the species or 3 different strains. So with the support of the international collaboration and the funding agencies, we are trying to develop diagnostic tools so that we can test the presence or absence of the virus at the port of entry. Here we are trying to develop a conventional RT-PCR technique, and then further more precise and accurate qPCR technique that is based on 2 different assays. One is CyberGreen based assay and other is TaqMan assay. Why we are doing this many different techniques? So that once we transfer the technique to USDA APHIS, they can further adopt it based on the port of entry, what all the expertise and what all instrumentation is available. It can be adopted at any place. A little bit background, what is there? So in conventional PCR, what we are doing is the detection of virus that are DNA or the DNA viruses. But in this case, as it is a RNA virus, we usually do RT-PCR. And RT-PCR here we can do is either one step where we are adding all the components together in one tube and detecting the presence of the virus. Or we can do it in 2 steps where first step, we are doing the cDNA synthesis followed by doing the PCR for the detection of this virus. When it comes to the qPCR, we are having 2 different platforms. One is CyberGreen assay, where we are using the fluorescence dye and that detect based on the detection of double-stranded molecule. Whereas in case of TaqMan, that is little bit more specific and more expensive. At the other hand, it is based on the probe that is designed more specific towards the virus target gene, and only when the probe is present, then only we can see the fluorescence. So to begin with these 2 quarantine pathogens that are not present in US so far or not detected in US so far, I have to get the samples from outside. So for peanut clump virus, Dr. Isaac is in Senegal. He collected the sample from there, and Dr. Harisudini, he's in ICRISAT, and he collected 2 different strains from India, and they mailed us all the freeze-dry material. So we never received any live tissue in the US. We always get the freeze-dry material that are biologically inactive. We can only do the molecular work in this material, but we cannot do any biological work when we receive this sample. So these samples are very safe to use in our lab. So as we receive the sample, we first try to confirm whether the virus is present or not. So for that, as we earlier mentioned, we developed the RT-PCR technique. And as we see, when we received the sample for PCV, we tested for the presence of two different target, code protein as well as replicase gene. And the samples we received, they were all infected with the PCV from Senegal. And the one we received from ICRISAT, there we targeted code protein for the and triple gene block for the D isolate as well as D strain, and code protein and triple gene block for the H strain. So we have the infected samples, and these are the various. The next step was to develop the qPCR or quantitative PCR, where we can actually know how much quantity of the RNA of virus RNA is present. In this case, first I will begin with PCV. So in PCV, we targeted, as mentioned earlier, is code protein and RDRP, and where the target size are mentioned here. And to confirm or to have a negative control, we use two different plant genome. One is ADH3 and other is actin 11. So looking at this graph, on the right side, on the left side, we see that code protein, PCV code protein, it's giving a nice amplification with a CQ value of approximately 17%, whereas for RDRP also it is 17. And when we are doing it in the PCV infected one, we can have the internal control. So we say that the process we developed is very much specific towards detection of code protein, PCV, as well as RDRP targets. To see how much specific they are, we looked at the melting curve, and they are very much specific at 80 degree, close to 80 degrees centigrade, the TM value for the code protein as well as for the RDRP. And at the same case, when we are doing both the internal control, they have similar melt curve. So suggesting they are highly specific to this one. The second one, the next step is to develop the real-time Tagman assay for PCV. So to do that, we have to have a standard curve. And for that, we first develop the 18-fold dilution of the RNA, so that we can have a various level of RNA present at our template. So the total RNA from the infected leaf tissue, that was purified, and then it is diluted from starting from 200 nanogram to until 0.0015 nanogram. So if we see how much it can detect, at to what level it can detect, we see that the PCV or RDRP, it can detect from anywhere from 200 nanogram of RNA to up to 0.012 nanogram. Same case for the internal control. And where we have a good CQ value, that is range from 18 to 32, depending upon the presence of the starting template. The more we have, the less number of the CQ value we have, that means we have more amount of the target compared to when we have less amount of the target, the CQ value increases. When we look at the standard curve, the efficiency, it should be somewhere between 90 to 100 or above. So in all the cases, we have 94 or 91 to 100, the standard curve. So we see that it's highly efficient assay that is developed to detect the presence of PCV in the sample that we received from Senegal. Further, we tried, so far what we have done here is the detection of internal control as well as the virus separately, but then we tried to have both PCV, code protein, RDRP, and actin all in one. So that we have two virus target as well as one internal target, all are clumped together, and we can detect it at equally efficient way. Whereas when we are doing it with or without the infected one. So we cannot detect in this one. We detect only as a control, suggesting that there is no cross reaction or anything going on here. In this one, we tested between the efficiency of the assay between the multiplex, where we are detecting both all the three targets, whereas singleplex, where we are detecting only the individual targets. And we see there is not much difference between whether we are doing the multiplex assay or we are doing the singleplex assay. Next, I will move on to IPCV. So as I suggested, in IPCV, we have two different strains, D and H. So in this case, for D and H, we have coat protein as a target, and we have RDRP as a common target. So for IPCV, RDRP, we have taken both as a common, whereas it's different for D and H. And again, we have internal control, two different internal controls. So when I see for the coat protein, when coat protein alone we are testing, we are able to see coat protein for IPCV D-isolate, RDRP D-isolate, as well as internal control. Same case, we are having a good CQ value for H-isolate coat protein, as well as RDRP and infected for the internal control. Whereas in healthy plant, we are not able to detect any of the virus gene, suggesting it's very much specific with respect to detecting IPCV. In this case, again, we did the MELT curve for the specificity, and here we see that for coat protein, it is at 82 to 83 degree centigrade, whereas at that range, whereas for the internal control, it is again 82 to 85. So what the next, this all is for the CyberGreen, and then for the TaqMan assay. In the TaqMan, what we did coat protein for the D and H, whereas internal control, RDRP, and then we added one more, where a portion of the RNA RDRP that is common for both PCV as well as IPCV, so that we can detect both PCV, IPCV, both the strain that we have all together in one assay. So in this case, what we have seen that the assay we developed, the primers and probes we developed, they are very efficient to detect and at varying concentration. So in this case, we can see that it can, for the coat protein, it can detect up to 0.006 nanogram, up to 0.7 nanogram when it comes to the picovirus D. The only question when we faced here is the RDRP D-isolate. We don't know why it needs such a high concentration for D-isolate. But when it comes to the D-isolate coat protein, we can detect in much lower level compared to the RDRP. So finally, in this, what we have done, we have tried to bring in everything together. So it's we are still working on this particular assay, where we are trying to detect coat protein D-isolate and coat protein from H, RDRP, and picovirus RNA1, as I said earlier, and actin gene. So in this case, what we see that we are able to detect all the three viruses target as well as the controls. So it is pretty much standard. We are still working on it. It needs a little bit more fine tuning before we can say that this assay, particular assay as a 5-plex, where we can detect all the targets, is ready. So finally, when it comes to the management strategies, I will go back a little bit and suggest that this PCV and IPCV, as I said earlier, they are soil-borne because it is transmitted by the fungus, P. graminis, and it is again transmitted by seed as well. It is highly resistant and can survive in soil. That's why we get clump or symptoms in the field. It can transmit in dicots as well, but the virus or the fungus is not colonizing in the dicot. Thereby, it gives us a management option, because dicot can act as a trap host here where we can trap all the vector before we start putting our crops. Whereas it's a preferred host for maize, pearl millet, or sorghum. But if we are putting dicot before this host, then we can able to reduce the inoculum of the fungus, thereby reduce the inoculum of the virus. As I said, it's transmitted by seeds in both groundnut as well as cereal. So one of the management strategy that is suggested for this type of this disease is having continuous cropping of trap crops or fructiferous crop host, so that we can reduce the soil inoculum, and then intercropping with the susceptible cereal crops. There are different cultural practices that are suggested for the management strategies. One is being said the early sowing of the groundnut before the onset of the rain, because as the rain arrives, the fungal population or the fungal colonies increases, thereby increases the source of inoculum. Use of pearl millet as a trap crop, as I suggested earlier, before the groundnut, and remove them before the sowing of the groundnut. Adding rotational crop with peanuts or groundnut. Use of dicot to reduce the soil inoculum. Soil solarization, a way to reduce the fungal growth. And so far, based on the peanut germplasm, there is no resistance available against IPCV. Any report against PCV is not yet reported, but so far there is no resistance source available with IPCV. So what is the ultimate? So far it is not present in the US. So what can we do to avoid that one? So currently it is quarantine to the US, and we are working to develop the accurate or reliable diagnosis tools. In US, we have both the vector as well as host. So if it is introduced in any way, it will be causing a severe economic loss to the peanut industry. But other thing we have to do is the screening of resistance. Although this is not possible in US, maybe we have to do it with the international collaboration and use of molecular tools to develop sort of resistance. It can be transgenic or it can be gene editing. Somehow we have to develop, use the advanced tool to develop cultivated varieties that can have resistance against the clump viruses. With this, I would like to thank the organizing committee again for having me and share my work here, and the funding agencies, and I'm happy to have any questions. It's been short. Thank you.